So it's not too difficult to see how these action items propel and strengthen WEPs implementation and gender equality efforts in your organizations. And there are strong links to the SDG goals. So clearly a lot of ideas and partnerships emerging from this meeting will be plowed into the WEPs 2016-2017 strategy and action items. We are really now going into the report backs, and we will begin with our first topic, which was changing behavior and workplace culture for inclusion. I'd just like to remind you that the order in which, or the format that we're going to follow is, we will have one of the reporters come up here and make the report back. There will be takeaways, actions, and of course the tweet that they will do, and all of this has to be done in just 2 minutes. We will have flags that'll go up, so I'm going to be standing here on guard, trying to make sure that you follow the time. We've got 6 groups to go through, so if I could request Shahnaz to please come up. Changing behavior and workplace culture for inclusion.
I had the privilege of listening to Tina Nielsen, who literally moved the elephant for inclusion.
Are they all here?
The breakout session this morning on changing behavior and workplace culture for inclusion was a unique session which provided practical solutions for those of us seeking to create inclusive workplace by changing individual behavior, organizational culture, and processes. So, what are the takeaways? Rational arguments aren't sufficient to bring about change. Behavioral change is necessary. Learn the techniques of inclusion nudges to help the unconscious mind be gender inclusive. Example, like rephrasing questions using opting in as the default rather than opting out. And make people feel the need to change inequality, feel the need. And time to take action, design inclusion nudges with gender equality in mind, mitigate bias through behavioral design, reframe perceptions. You can see WEP, time for action WEPs. And spread the word. What is your tweet? Change, #behavior, and #workplace culture to be gender equal with #inclusive nudges. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you, Shahnaz. Okay, up next is Women and the Value Chain, Lessons Learned.
Thank you. I'm Joan Kerr, and very privileged to speak for this group. It was a very passionate and powerful group. Our main takeaways: all actors have a role to play in supporting and advancing women in the value chain and should be held accountable through targets and metrics. Those are a lot of words. Basically, it's everyone has to take action and be held accountable. Open markets for women by buying from women-owned businesses. If you procure anything or influence procurement, from your household to your corporation to your government role, make sure you're buying from women. And third, support women's business development through training, advocacy, and supply chain integration. Time to take action. Invest in women-owned businesses. That means by buying from them as well as becoming equity investors. Create opportunities for women to access markets. And that means really affirmatively stepping out and reaching out to women to include them. Develop public-private partnerships to create an ecosystem for inclusive procurement. Ecosystem was a key word throughout our session. Because we know we each have an important role to play. We can't defer it to someone else. So our tweet, #EachOneTeachOne. that part came from making sure we share our knowledge with women-owned businesses, whatever knowledge we have. Support #women entrepreneurs and create inclusive opportunities in the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Okay, so we've had 2 women set the time for us. Ending violence against women is everyone's business. Workplace action and responses is next. Just introduce yourself and go into the
Lovely.
takeaways.
Good afternoon. I'm Alison Agarwal from the Australian Human Rights Commission. So just doing the report back for this session. This session started really interestingly because we had the story of a woman, Rosie Batty. Is Rosie in the room today? She's gone? Okay. And it started with her story of her experience where her son was murdered by his father and her former partner. And that story actually set the tone for the whole session in terms of bringing to the fore an open and honest discussion. I think when we talk about these kinds of issues, we need to bring those personal stories into the room because it's real lives that we're talking about. So some of the key insights and the main takeaways that we had. So firstly, domestic and family violence has a profound impact on women's participation in the workplace and on their economic security. So this couldn't be understated. It's part of so many people's lives. Secondly, workplaces do have a role, as do governments, in responding to domestic and family violence. And this can include supporting survivors, addressing perpetrators in the workplace, building respectful cultures, and joining forces with customers, suppliers, and communities to create a society and culture where domestic and family violence is unacceptable. The third main takeaway was that of partnership. And the partnerships, this can be multi-stakeholder approaches can amplify our impact and drive cultural change towards zero tolerance for domestic and family violence. And those partnerships are across the private sector, government, unions, and women's and community organisations. Key actions, so the key actions were to communicate, so communicate domestic and family violence as a workplace issue. Secondly, to enable access to referral pathways and assistance for employees impacted by violence. And critically, to also provide additional paid leave to employees experiencing domestic and family violence. And the third was partnership again with the range of stakeholders to create a culture where family and domestic violence is unacceptable. One of the key take-homes as well that came out of the session was that we really need to keep our foot on the accelerator in this space, because as soon as we lift our foot, there is a risk, a real risk, of things reverting to a situation where domestic violence isn't recognised as a workplace issue and isn't addressed as a workplace issue. So there needs to be a constant effort and reiteration of that effort to really make sure that that's accepted and acknowledged and dealt with.
And the tweets, did you have any tweets?
Yes, we had tweets. Okay, it's right in front of me. Spread the word. What is your tweet? Domestic violence is a workplace issue. Your biz can implement /WEPs Principle 3 to support survivors and encourage an inclusive work culture. So please tweet.
Thank you. Thank you. We move on to accelerating gender equality in practice, male middle managers' role. Thank you.
So I'll keep it very quick. So my name is Nate Wong. I'm a manager out of DC in Deloitte's social impact practice. So we started off this session really unpacking Elizabeth Kalin's report called Linchpin. It's all in your app, so I won't belabor that. But it really painted some really tangible hooks that we could latch onto. So some of the key takeaways for us were cultivating male middle managers as role models for gender inclusive leadership. And really part of that is making sure that we're talking about sponsorship, we're talking about advocating for other women, in workplace conversations, in recruiting, and so forth. Our second takeaway, develop empathy in middle managers. And so part of this is looking at feedback and having a culture where you can engage in dialogue around unconscious bias awareness and then actually taking action. The third takeaway, encouraging male middle managers to critically reflect on their actions. We talked about the powerful use of reflection as a way to not only think about your actions in the past, but also to engage on future actions when it comes to gender equality. In terms of time to take action, we use the WEP framework as well. So creating a culture where bias can be called out, exploring ways to engage men in gender equality, and then providing concrete specific examples of gender bias. And this really is more so for all of you in this room, a little bit of self-reflection as you guys think about your own organizations. And then lastly, our tweet is cultivate male middle managers as #role models for gender #inclusive leadership. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Nate. Our fifth group and topic was why women's health in the workplace matters, prescriptions for action.
Thank you very much. I'm David Wofford with a small women-owned business named Meridian Group International, and our work is through a USAID-funded project called the Evidence Project. So we are on women's health and principle number 3, and I think one of our key points that we talked about is the fact that family planning and women's health are essential parts of women's advancement and empowerment. And in poor and middle income countries, for companies to talk about empowerment but not to deal with these issues is really to not take care of poor women and their needs, their ability to advance, be in the private sector. We had 2 companies, Jabil, which is a huge firm you've never heard of, but they make products that go into your products, electronic and otherwise. And Jabil made the point that when they did their health education program, the HER project, which they've embedded into their programs in China, that not only was it good for the women, but it also helped advance the women to higher jobs because it built skills and talent and ways to communicate that allowed them to move up. So it's both important for them to be in a company and move up. The second thing to move quickly on is, there are a lot of very good workplace programs out there around the world. Family planning and women's health and health is not actually controversial around the world, but many people think it is, and that we really need to highlight it. And that's one of the things we need to do is get more data on the benefits both to society and to women themselves in the workforce. So our third point, well, that is our third point, time to take action. We can move on. I did both. So communicate the business case for women's health and family planning in your workforce. And I think it's important to point out that communicating is not just return on investment, absenteeism, and turnover, which are important, but there's all sorts of other benefits that we discussed. On top of that, disaggregated data is really important, and so many labor standards forget that they ought to be collecting sex disaggregated data, including in your workplace health programs. Finally, I'm over time here apparently, partner with healthcare NGOs and governments and public clinics. Companies shouldn't feel they're alone, that there really are partnerships, and UNFPA and USAID and DFID, and there are many NGOs around the world, CARE and Marie Stopes and others, that really have a lot of experience out there, and that you should look to partner because the resources are there. These aren't unknowns. So my final tweet is, your biz can implement the WEPs 3 to ensure health and reproductive services are accessible to both male and female employees, and I think it's worth saying that even though family planning and women's health is important, men are a crucial part of this, and they are also equally important to take ownership of family planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And we really, we clearly engineered it for, the men in the group to really catch up with the women who were on time. So our last topic was employees, employers, and economies agree, childcare, now on the agenda.
Thank you, thank you. Hi, I'm Avra Siegel. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Strategic Partnerships at care.com. So we talked about the business case and the societal case for employer-supported childcare, and we've condensed slides, so hopefully it'll be efficient. The main takeaway is that it's a win-win-win for childcare solutions are a win-win-win for employers, employees, and communities alike. We know that there's a huge macro case for why child and care and supportive child care services matter to our society and why they increase women's labor force participation. But we also know at the firm level that also holds true, that we see decreased absenteeism, better attraction and retention of workers and talent, higher productivity levels when employees are supported with child care services in the workplace. And we have a lot of data on that at care.com that we've discovered through our partner companies and through our surveys, which are also part of the app if you're interested in some of that data. We also know that you need to engage internal and external stakeholders by substantiating and communicating the business case for employer-supported childcare. So we need to find ways to work with the multilats, with the ILO, with the IFC, with the UN on communicating the case for public infrastructure of care, but also, again, private and private company-supported care. And then finally, we can't do it alone, right? No sector can do it alone. We have to partner with business and governments and CSOs to better meet the child care needs of all employees, women and men. So you need that public infrastructure and that private infrastructure because doing one without the other isn't going to work for all workers. So those are the main takeaways. Do we have a tweet? We have a tweet. Tackling childcare is key to retaining more #women employees. So with that, I just also want to say that care.com is excited to announce that today we signed on to WEPs. So we're one of the newest companies. And we really look forward to working with everyone in the room to further these highly significant issues.
Thank you, Avra.